And go ahead and record this then. So this is a recording of the very first Heart of a Mother book study, and I'm turning control over to Sherry Turner, our moderator.
Well, I don't know if it's wise to turn control over to me, but you know, we're gonna give it a try. That was supposed to be a joke. I guess it was bad. but anyway, there are 3 essays that I believe we're going to go over tonight. And if I'm wrong about that, Anna, please step in and say so.
Okay. You are wrong about that.
I am wrong about that. Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry. There was a last minute change. Alysanne forgot that she had an appointment, a previous commitment. So she's actually going to be coming to a later book study. So tonight it's just Anita and me.
Oh, I thought Holly was going to be here too. No?
Not tonight. She'll be here next week.
Okay. Well, then we have 2 essays that we're going to be going over. And I was originally gonna introduce each of you with a little blurb about what you wrote, but I kind of got to thinking that maybe you would do a better job of introducing yourself than I would. And I had a little situation at home that came up that I couldn't sit down and write everything for. So when it's your turn, please introduce yourself, say a little bit about your essay. You don't have to read the whole thing or anything, just, you know, just something to let us briefly know about you and your loved one with a heart defect, and we can go from there. So I was thinking that we start with Anna because she wrote the book. You probably know the most about her. She is a wonderful person that I have had the pleasure of knowing for 20 some odd years. That went by really fast, and we've done a lot together. And I'm gonna let her do her thing to introduce herself, and then I'll ask the questions if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Sherry. Yay, Sherry.
Thank you.
In Toastmasters, after somebody speaks, we always clap because that's the only payment you get in Toastmasters. And that's pretty much the only payment we're going to get here too. So yay for Sherry. And especially since this is our first time friends, we have gotten together and we've talked about it. I think we're both really excited to be here, and especially to have so many of you here. Megan is here from Australia. Libby is here from Australia. I know people are here from all over the world, which really makes it exciting. And that's what the Heart of a Mother was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a book by women from all over the world who had been affected by congenital heart defects. And we all chose different things to talk about. Some people wrote more than one essay, like I wrote a couple of essays. And the essay that I chose to speak about first is the one that I wrote that was a tribute to my mother. So for those of you who don't know, my mom passed away in 2018. So this is a very touching topic for me to talk about. And I couldn't really imagine doing this without having Anita share her story, because Anita has touched me so much with her story over the years with Gabe. And she was just, I don't know, I think Gabe was an angel on my shoulder saying, pick my mom first, pick my mom first. So, so I picked Anita first. So Anita, do you want to introduce yourself, sweetie?
Sure. Anita Marcelo, and I live in Washington State. I have 2 sons, the youngest of which is the one that was born with a severe single ventricle type complicated heart defect. And I joined the internet when he was like, he might have been about 6. So I didn't have any connection with other heart families or parents. We had a local support group, but it wasn't a huge thing. But the internet was just the beginning of so much, and I met many people online and was able to grow with those relationships over the years. So this has all meant a lot to me, just the interactions. And so doing an essay for Anna was really a good way to connect in a really meaningful way. So.
Well, yay,
Great.
she gets applause for that. Yay.
That's my
It was
introduction.
much
That's
rejoicing.
your introduction. I didn't even introduce. I'm a heart mom. For those of you who don't know me, I am a heart mom. Like Anita, I also have 2 sons. Joey is my heart healthy oldest son. He was born in 1991. And Alexander, like Anita, my Alexander has a single ventricle heart, complex congenital heart disease, and he was born in 1994. So, Sherry, is it okay for us to go ahead and do our slideshows? I did get it together, Anita. I got it together. And Anita inspired me to do mine a little bit differently than I planned on doing mine. So is it okay for us to go ahead
Yeah,
and do the
go
slideshows first?
go right ahead.
Okay, so Anita, you want to go first, sweetie?
Sure.
Sorry. Okay. Let's hope I can do this right. I'm going to be screen sharing with all of you, and I'm using what's a new program to me, and it's called Keynote. So let me see if I can move this out of the way. There we go. Look, Anita, I made a title page and everything.
Wow, that is very cool. Thank you, Anna.
Isn't that pretty? Okay, so now let's see if I can figure out. There's supposed to be, oh, play slideshow. Here we go. Oh, now here's a problem. With Zoom, I can't move the, wow. Okay, maybe we won't do it like a slideshow quite like that. Oh, and Edie's here, Edie Spears, and I can't do that while I'm trying to screen share. Okay, hold on everybody, I'm having a problem. Oh.
So this is the first one. And this is many of the early year pictures. The one where I'm holding him as an infant was actually taken by the ICU nurses the night that he was 3 weeks old there.
Aww.
And that's when he was diagnosed, and he had surgery the next day. So they came up to me and asked me, do you have a photo of your son? And I just like, of you and your son together, I guess was it. And I just was at a loss. So they go, we're going to take one. So this has been really special to me.
Nice.
And then the one with him and his brother hugging is when the night before his Fontan, and they were in the car that morning at the hospital waiting to go in. And then the one with him in the wheelchair is the one where he was inpatient for the Fontan. And then the other one where he's running is one later on that was just a joy to look at any point in my life. I loved looking at that picture, and reminded me of all the good results of those surgeries. And he started preschool at 3, and that was a giant, huge bus. And he was the only rider, and he had a bus driver who would give him a kiss on the top of his head. And he was, as you can see, almost always happy, sweet, smiling, very lovable.
Adorable.
And that his oldest brother's name is Jaime, and he was 3 years older than him.
We have so many similarities, Anita, because my boys were also 3 years apart.
So I wanted to make sure and include a picture of him and his dad, which is the top middle picture there, because it was really important to know that although we did divorce, it was really key that we both be always supportive of our kids in each other's lives. That was really huge. And so he again, more happy, smiling, wonderful pictures. The one at the top is with my mom, who played a very key part in my life. She moved in with me after my dad died and was a great support. And they used to joke around, the two of them. They had their own language. It was really funny. And then him and his brother were very close. And the bottom right-hand corner was the week that Jaime came out to spend with him the last time they were together.
So, Anita, what challenges were different for you as a result of being a single mother, you think?
The fact that pretty much I was alone. And I can tell you that it wasn't just physically being alone, like the fact that you're physically taking care of two children. And I did work, and there's no silver bullet where it comes to, you know, childcare or any other issue in your life. It's all hard. But Gabe had a lot of developmental issues and school related issues. And the fact of the matter was, I just wasn't believed by anybody. I wasn't believed by the teachers. I wasn't believed by Gabe's dad. At one point, I finally had him move in with his father. And I'd already sent his brother to be with his dad for a while, so that they would have time. I wanted my kids to be really grounded in the fact that that was their home also. That was their life also with their father. I really needed that to be a really strong message. And we always celebrated holidays together. You know, you just bite your tongue over a lot of stuff and just think about the kids, you know. So his dad just didn't really see a lot of Gabe's developmental issues, which were definitely related to his heart condition, because he didn't live with him. So he would think, well, you're just being indulgent, or you're just being, you know. I was not really very well believed by hardly anyone. I finally got a counselor for him when he was 8 years old. And she stayed with him till he was 19. I mean, they were together. She was awesome. No, they were 19 years together. She stayed with him till he died. So there was a lot of work to try to get support for myself. And it was also psychological as well as physical. And so when my mother moved in with me in 2002, it just turned the tables, because I'd already had his dad living with Gabe, so that he began to understand a lot of the things were not so simple. It wasn't just, oh, you need to be more disciplined, or you need to. He had issues, and a lot of them were the organizational executive function issues that are related. And when he was 19, he had an MRI, and they found that his brain did not fill out his skull cavity in the front. So the circulatory issues that occurred even in your utero affected his brain function. And he was able to overcome that. But it took into his early 20s before he really leveled off as being up with his peers. He graduated from high school right at 18. It was a lot of work and a lot of tutors and a lot of help, but he had a lot of, he had Tourette's, he had anxiety, he had need for medication, counseling, and everything else. And then he had episodes of, you know, going blind suddenly and having, you know, physical manifestations that were neurological in nature, and just all kinds of things. So I was really always trying to keep things afloat, but it was the emotional connection to people who would believe me and care about me taking care of him that really helped me to get through it.
It sounds like you felt like other people judged you a lot.
It was horrible. Yeah. It was pretty horrible. We went through, I think, maybe 5 different grade schools. And finally, they were going to send him to a school in junior high that was geared for people who had the need to be put in lockup rooms. And I just said, no, I will not do that. It's
Yeah.
about behavior. It's not about, I said, my son needs an education, for God's sake. So we made an agreement that we would send him to junior high and he would attend 3 classes. So half the day he would do PE, he would do art or choir, I think choir it was, and art, those 3. So he had social interaction with other children, and then he would have a tutor in the afternoon. It was cheaper than sending him to the other school, so they agreed to it. This tutor was magnificent, and she got him through all of his grade school levels by the time he was in 8th grade. And so he started catching up, and all of a sudden the school people who had wanted to send him away, who looked down on him, who treated him so badly, were saying, wow, this is about education instead of behavior. And it's like, hello, what do you think happens when you, when you try to educate somebody? And like I say, he was 19 before anybody even did an MRI of his brain. And I found that educators really wanted a name for things. So the fact that he didn't have like a name for what was going on with him made him susceptible to, Mrs. Marcelo, you need to come pick him up and take him home because he's done this or he's done that. And, we wash our hands. So having gone through that for so long, you're pretty beat up,
So how do you practice self-care in a situation like that?
Well, it's at the end of it really helped once my mom moved in with me. The year and a half that the kids were at their dad's house, I was still at their dad's house every day doing all their schoolwork and all their care. So it wasn't like I lived in a little travel trailer behind the property because I had a piece of property we were going to build on, and that never came to pass. But I was at their house doing all the care for the kids every day anyway. So, it's not like you don't intentionally have self-care, but you just want to, I remember when Gabe was in the hospital and we had a need for respite care because he was so involved after his Fontan that they sent us to a court, to see a judge, to see if Department of Health Services would give us respite care. And so we went to this hearing. The judge was 7 months pregnant. There were 2 men from DSHS there who were trying to battle me over my need for respite care. I had the 2 boys sitting in the back, and I had just administered Gabe's IV medication through his Broviac line. And the judge says, well, we can't have this hearing with the children here. And I go, the whole point of the hearing is that I don't have anybody. And they just don't, the inability to grasp that you are entirely alone, the inability to understand is really phenomenal.
Yeah.
But, you just find better, just get through it,
What things did you do to get through it though? I mean, there must have been ways that you kept yourself sane.
I like my coffee. I like work. So I have a small business and I ran it. And it's a customer service business. So you're dealing with people who walk in and they need, in Washington State, we do all the vehicle renewals, tab renewals, title transfers. We do them in small offices. So I have one. And I liked it. I mean, you got positive feedback from people you were helping. It just felt good. As Gabe got sicker when he was older, It was harder because my mom died about 10 months before Gabe. And I'd be at work just not knowing if he was awake, and he was alone,
Oh,
and he needed oxygen and he needed medication. And I was back and forth, and I only lived 15 minutes from work. So I would drive home and see what was going on and go back to the office, and just back and forth. And I did get some help from, his dad and other people, but you have to be organized to do that. That's not my strong suit. Like, I can be focused about work. I can be focused about one thing or another, but it's hard.
and how did you help your other son cope with the situation? There must have been a lot of, I don't know, juggling priorities there.
My oldest son was, so it's a family thing. He was a classically trained violinist. So from the beginning, he was 4 years old when he started attending lessons. And we did those. I've got a really cute picture I could have put in there, but of Gabe trying to play a little flute and pretend it's a violin next to his brother while he's practicing. Really cute. So just trying to be supportive of him. One of the hardest things I will ever remember is my oldest son started kindergarten when Gabe was in the hospital for 6 weeks following his son, Fontan, and then he was home for 3 weeks, and then he had a terrible situation and had to be rehospitalized. And so my oldest son had just started kindergarten, and I had to, Gabe had to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance because his Broviac line got infected and he was unconscious. He had a seizure in the car, this coming home from taking my son to school. So I had to have somebody go pick up my son at school that day after he got out of school. And he just looked at this person and he knew something was wrong with his brother. And it is a hard thing to, like anybody else, it's like you care about your other children and how they're affected. So I looked into it and I found a support program. This was at the Catholic Church. So he was going to Catholic school. And there was a program called, I don't know whether it was a rainbow program or something. It was at night for a couple hours. And I took him to it. Gabe and I would have to drive around for a couple hours while we waited for him to be done and then pick him up. But it was so worth it because people children who had a parent or another relative who were impacted by death or illness or whatever were brought into this program and able to have this time to be understanding that this happens to a lot of people, and they got counseling. It was a wonderful group, but he got his light back in his eyes, and that was huge. So just trying to always put the spotlight on reading to my kids every day, doing the things that would just give them grounding, and the things that made me want to be a mother, doing things with my kids, art projects, reading books, all of those things, just having that continuity, that was huge. So it was really hard when I had to have him spend more time with his dad because of the violin. But he loved the violin and he was very good. So he was flying to Chicago 3 times a month for a couple of years and lots of stuff. So it was complicated, but it was, and I'll never forget him watching Gabe out in the front yard, and Jaime and my son Jaime and I were in the house, and Jaime was probably 9 or 10. And he stands there and he goes, "Isn't he the sweetest thing?" Like, what a thing for a 9-year-old to say, right? So, but I have picture after picture of them just hugging. And
that says something about what a good job you did helping them develop a good relationship.
Yeah. Well, my oldest son was real. He was black and white, and Gabe was all color. So if there was a fact that was true, my other son was like, this is the fact. And Gabe is, oh no, the sky is, some other weird color. No, it's this color. So there was no negotiating on that. They had their differences, and but you do allow for that. That's what makes them who they are.
Mm-hmm. So I think Amy had a question for you.
Yeah.
Hi, Anita.
Hi.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. It broke my heart, and sorry.
It's okay.
We're here to cry together, right? And heal together.
Yes.
So I just got folded into this group, and I know this book is 20 years old, but I didn't realize that Gabe had passed. And I was wondering if it's not too painful, if you could share a little bit about how that happened and why that happened.
Yeah. And I'm really, really, really trying to look at how what happened to him can be something that can help those who are coming up in the world, the world of complexity. Because when he was little, he's at Children's Hospital, and he thought every person at Children's Hospital was his buddy. He just felt comfortable there, and he would talk to anyone, and he just if he had to be there, even if it was for a treatment, it didn't matter. But as he got older, then he migrated to the adult congenital heart disease clinic at UW Medicine in Seattle. There were a lot of stumbling blocks, but his doctor that he was transferred to had started with him at Children's. So she saw him at Children's for 3 years, and then saw him at the UW, which was a great transition. But Gabe, because he's an adult, you just don't have, he always wanted me to be in the appointments with him, so that was good. But there were times when I would try to allow him to just have time with the doctor or whatever. And in about a year and a half before he died, his heart started failing. And it was just all these various things that happened that made you just wonder, should you be doing something, but you don't really know, right? So he was needing more oxygen. So he had oxygen at home from the time he was 16. But he hated using it because it made him dry and blah, blah, blah. So we go over that, how we could make that work. And he had to have, and he'd have these episodes where he needs oxygen right now. And that was new for him. And he developed a cough and was sent to a lung guy, and the lung guy put him on some medication. But then there were problems with the medication. Was the medication the problem, or was it something else? Was this a totally different thing? Or was this related to his heart? I mean, it wasn't like I could get somebody to really say, hey, we're on this trajectory. So about the time that my mom had a sudden stroke, and it was a massive stroke that took out half her brain. And it was the day that Gabe was scheduled for a cath to investigate what was going on with his heart. That was in February of 2016. And we had to cancel the cath because Gabe got sick. It was oh, the flu. Oh, what happened? He never gets sick. So we canceled it. The next morning, we found my mother in her room, and she'd had this stroke. And so we had this massive, oh my God. And Gabe kept getting sicker, and I had to take him I had my mom at one hospital and my Gabe at another hospital. I was trying to, manage all that. So every step of the way was kind of like a non-definitive, you're in failure, nothing good is going to come from this. In 2012, he'd had a cath in which they said he's got a really bad heart. we're going to refer you to heart transplant. And by May of 2013, they said he can't have a transplant. He has too many antibodies. He'd never take a heart. So we knew we had nowhere to go. We knew we had no avenue. And no one was offering any avenue. There wasn't like, oh, here's a trial of this or that. And Gabe actually asked the transplant doctor, he goes, well, how long will it be till they make your own heart out of your own cells? And she goes, probably 10 years. And he was so discouraged because he was like looking at those things as maybe that's what will save me, right? So we didn't expect it, but after this episode was kind of like the flu, he got anemic because the testing they do up here pricked something in his nose and just had blood flowing for probably 2 months. And he finally had to have treatment for that. And then within a month of having the treatment for the severe anemia, he ended up in the hospital. And it was at that time they said, well, the medication he's taking for his heart function is not getting to him. It's not getting to his body. It's not, I don't remember what you call it, but when it's not
metastasizing?
Yeah, it's not efficient. It's
Yeah.
not getting there. It's getting to his gut, but that's all the further it's getting. So he needed IV diuretics. So he was in the hospital for like 3 weeks on IV diuretics. And we had a conversation with the doctor in the hallway where he kind of, I would say, wanted to tell us that this is not good. But I don't think he really was able to kind of get there. And that's part of the problem. We needed real concrete direction and help. And we did not get it. We did not get it. And he finally, my son, in October of 2016, again in the hospital, called the doctors in. And he just had all these episodes of having too much fluid. His weight went up to 300 pounds. He'd lose 30 pounds of fluid in the hospital. It's just horrible. I mean, could you imagine, really? I'm just like, I can't imagine it's me being the mom. So he's in the hospital and he asked the doctor to come in, and the palliative care doctor came in and he said, you've seen my heart inside and out, and I would like you to tell me what you think my life expectancy is. Well, this was a doctor who didn't want to really face us or be direct with us. And he said, he goes, I think it's probably either 2 to 3 months, maybe 2 to 3 years, but not longer than that. And Gabe just turned over in bed and didn't want to talk to anybody after that. It was such a devastating blow to him. So in my heart, all I was doing was looking for ways to keep him like wanting to be alive. So we had a visit with Nintendo. We had a big interaction that way. If I'm taking too long, tell me. I had family members come. His birthday came up. Christmas came. The day after Christmas, he comes to me and he says, Mom, I just sat down to watch a show I had taped. And he said, Mom, we need to go to the hospital. I said, we do? And he goes, well, we needed to go all during Christmas, but I didn't want to tell you. So I would pack up his DS chargers, his phone chargers, my charger, all our stuff. He always wanted to wear his own clothes. So I packed all the shorts and the t-shirts and all that. And I took him to the hospital. He had a clot right at the edge of his aorta.
Oh.
Right at the edge of his aorta, a large clot. So now he's going to be put on new medications. I was at work when they did this test. His dad and his grandmother were there. And that was the day after we put him in the hospital. And I had to be at work because huge changes were happening there. I had to be there. So they had to call me. The doctor had to call me. I freaked out your son. I'm so sorry. Can you talk to him? So I talked to him and we got him settled down. And then he he wanted to go home for New Year's. They didn't want him to go home. But I said, okay. And they made an agreement. If you do some blood tests at your local office and keep us up to date on what's happening. So that was December 31st. And then,
You okay?
yeah. So then January 14th, he died at home. And I was getting ready for work, and they tried for an hour. They tried for an hour and they couldn't. And I said, he had signed a pulse, so they knew that he did not want to be put on a ventilator. And he died. And
I'm so sorry for your loss.
It's never enough, and you are never ready. I don't care who you are. I don't care how sick your child has been. I don't know how many times we faced really grave situations. Nothing is like this. But I hope that doctors can learn to really address the needs of adults with congenital heart disease. I think it is a huge failing, and I can't tell you how many times he was treated in a local hospital, and it just was such a failure, abject failure. Even the UW hospital, when we weren't with the cardiology people, it was like, do you guys understand? Even grasp, you know?
Yeah, this is Nancy. I know a lot of what you've been saying, Anita. My daughter also
Yep.
passed away at home, but we knew
Jessica.
for many, 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 many years that she was going to die because she would have had to have had a heart and lung transplant. And she hemorrhaged and almost died during her second heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And she had strokes and things. And so we just did not feel like transplant. And even our surgeon here, he's world renowned. He has since retired. Pediatric cardiologist joked that Jessica put him into retirement for all she put him through. But he would teach heart and lung transplant around the world. And I met other doctors from other countries who were here learning. And when we'd go into maybe, post-op care, but like Gabe, she came so close to death so many times that you just can't believe it actually happened. And
Well,
it wasn't
Mhm.
even her heart defects that took her life. It was her ischemic bowels. And she, for many, many years, her bowels were slowly dying. She didn't have enough oxygen in her blood, plus the through arteries that went to the gut were extremely narrow all the way through, which is what her I'm sorry. My brain just suddenly went whoop.
Yeah.
Her pulmonary artery only went from lung to lung and didn't even reach down to the heart, and only reached out to 1/3 of each lung and was extremely narrow and stiff. And the arteries in her legs were damaged when she was 2 weeks old and almost died. And that's when they found all these heart problems. She ended up with 9 that I can count heart defects, but she survived to be 22. But she was on oxygen the majority of her life. When you were talking about how Gabe didn't like the oxygen, boy, she didn't like it either, but she couldn't walk across the room without being extremely short of breath. And even with it on, she couldn't, but her oxygen wouldn't plummet quite so low. But a lot of what you've been telling me, and you and I have kind of followed each other for quite a few years. But
Yep.
how old was Gabe when he passed?
He was 27. He had just
He was
turned 27
Okay.
3 weeks prior to that.
So Anita and Nancy, I don't mean
Yes.
to rudely interrupt, but we're at quarter after, and I haven't even been talked with Anna yet about
Oh,
her.
No, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I couldn't think of a graceful way to intervene, but
You're fine, Sherry. You're fine.
You did great, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry.
This is what this is all about, is for us to have a chance to share stories and be with each other. I mean, this is the kind of support that we couldn't have 20 years ago. This would have been amazing 20 years ago, but we had the book, and that, for a lot of us, that was more than we had ever had. Wouldn't you say, ladies?
Yep.
Okay, so I get to do my slideshow. Yay, let's see if I can make my work. Let's see. Okay, you inspired me. Now let's see if I can do mine. Uh-oh. Here we go. Yay, okay. So I am terribly embarrassed to say that I don't have many pictures when on my computer, not even here. So I grabbed what photos I had, and here's a picture of Alex and me at Loch Ness. He's wanting to write a story about Loch Ness, and we got a chance to go and see Scotland together. And there's a picture of me with my family, my mom, and just Alex. Joey was already not living at home, and my husband. And then here's one with just my core family, my two sons and me. This is Alexander as a pharmacy tech. Now, those of you who knew me way back when, over 20 years ago,
Wow.
Alex wasn't expected to make it to age 5. So for him to grow up and then actually work at the hospital where he was born is just pretty amazing to me. This is a picture of my mom, and the essay that I chose to talk about tonight is a tribute to my mom, because my relationship with my mother really, really changed after Alexander was born. This is her with her little dog, Birdie. She came and moved back to Texas when she was quite elderly and needed a lot of love, and Birdie gave her a lot of love. Here she is with my 2 boys in our library. That's the last Christmas that she had with us. And then I did this picture, which shows that my mom passed away in 2018, but later that year, my grandbaby was born. And so this is Alexander with his big brother, Joey, and our little grandbaby, Rowan. And then here's Alex. Just last year, right before COVID hit, we had a chance to go visit Joey and Rowan and Ashley, my daughter-in-law, in Florida. And here's Alex blowing a bubble with my little grandbaby. So
that's great.
Oh,
yeah, that's right. I get applause. Yay! I did a slideshow.
Anna, is Rowan the Joey's or Alex's child?
Joey's, my heart healthy child. Now, we were worried because family members who have left-sided heart problems often will see it in subsequent generations. And so, of course, I was really nervous when Joey's wife got pregnant, and she did have a heart murmur, but now she's 2 and the heart murmur has ceased. So we know that the hole in her heart has closed up.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm happy I could share Rowan with all of you.
It sounds like you had a really supportive family around you, Anna.
I did, for the most part. I think that anytime you have a child with a chronic illness, it stresses all those relationships. And as I wrote in my essay, my mother hated hospitals, and I didn't say why she did. I didn't really understand as much as I did later after she moved back to Texas and she was actually living in my home. She told me that her grandmother had been a nurse. And when she was a little girl, her parents got divorced and her dad got custody of her and her younger sister. And they went to live with his mother, with her grandmother, because he was in the Navy and he would be stationed on the boat for weeks or months on end. So she really lived with her grandmother, and Grandma Jean was a nurse, and Grandma Jean would come home and talk about what happened at the hospital. my mom was very young and impressionable, and it just terrified her. So after that, she didn't want to have anything to do with hospitals or nurses or anything medical. So I think that made it really challenging for her. And we just never really saw the doctors much when I was little. I broke my arm, but aside from that, we just really didn't have much to do with hospitals. And so to be told that her grandson had something wrong, I was supposed to go to lunch with my sister and found out that something was wrong. We went to his 2-month well baby checkup. I had been saying for 2 months that something was wrong. I kept taking him back and forth to the hospital, and they kept telling me not to compare him to Joey because every child was different. And then finally, when I kind of feel like you, Anita, you were telling your story. I'm like, me too. I wasn't hurt either. Everything I said, they dismissed. I was too overprotective. I was too this, I was too that. And they had convenient labels for everything. He had breast milk jaundice, and he was just petite like me, and all these things that I was worried about, until they said, oh, well, we're admitting him for failure to thrive. And then they almost did a stress test on him, but thank goodness for a very observant and assertive nurse who said, what did his chest x-ray show? And they hadn't done a chest x-ray. And she said, that baby has a heart or lung problem. And she was absolutely right. So they did an x-ray, saw that his heart went from the middle of his chest all the way over to the other side of his chest, and said, we got to get this baby out of here. We're not prepared to take care of a baby like this. And so when they asked me where to go, I said, I want to go to San Antonio because that's where my parents were. That's where I had gone to school. And I knew there was a huge medical center there. And I just knew there was somebody there to help take care of Alexander. But I didn't know how my mom would take it, Sherry. She really didn't do well with hospitals. And so she really surprised me. So that's why I felt that I needed to dedicate the book to her. I needed to dedicate that essay to her, because she rose above. And now that I'm a grandma, I totally get it. You will do anything for your kids and your grandkids, right, Rita? Rita knows what I'm talking about too, because she's a grandmother. Yeah, and you just rise above. You do what you have to do. And my mom surprised me, and she really was as supportive, I think, as she could be. And my dad too. I mean, they fed me, they took care of me, and they took care of Alex.
That must have been a real transformative experience to see your mom step up and your dad step up the way they did.
Yeah, I think, like Anita was saying, I didn't have enough sleep. I was feeling overlooked. Worse than that, I found out with Alex's second operation that the ambulance had called in the fact that they were bringing Alex, and all they said was, this is a failure to thrive baby. And so all the nurses and doctors that were admitting him thought that I was an abusive mother.
Oh no.
So I was kind of held at arm's length, which was really, I couldn't understand why they didn't want me near my baby. It was heartbreaking. And it wasn't until they watched me day after day with my son that they realized things were different. And by then I was able to talk to them and tell them my story and how we kept saying something was wrong and nobody believed us. So Anita, I totally hear you. I totally know where you're coming from.
Didn't he at one point have a suggested diagnosis of cystic fibrosis?
Right. That's why they had, right. Until that other nurse, his pediatrician said, we're admitting him. And I said, how can you admit him? You've told me for 2 months he's fine and it's all in my head. And she said, well, we're admitting him for failure to thrive. And I said, wait a minute, that's not my baby. That's babies that aren't loved. And she said, that's also babies with critical birth defects or critical illnesses. Critical illnesses is what she said. And I said, but he's never had a fever. He's never had diarrhea. He's never thrown up. What do you mean a critical illness? And I kept pushing her. And I said, you have to give me something. You have to tell me what you think this is. And she said, I think it's cystic fibrosis. So that's why he was scheduled for a sweat test. And had that observant nurse not come forward and said, no, we need to do a chest x-ray, they said that the sweat test would have killed him. because he was already in congestive heart failure. So doing that sweat test would have stressed his heart too much, and he would have died.
Oh, well, you had angels watching over you.
Yeah, that was divine intervention.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, the nurse always seems like there's a nurse somewhere that acts as an angel. I mean, my son, for those of you who don't know, I had a son in 1997, and he had hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and we didn't know before he was born. We gave birth and he couldn't breathe, so they had to figure out why he couldn't breathe, and he ended up at Children's Hospital in Boston, and they told us that he had a less than 30% chance of making it. And we tried to have him undergo the first surgery of the 3-stage surgeries that you get, and he couldn't come off ECMO, so he ended up dying at the hospital. And
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. The nurses were wonderful. I feel like they remembered that he was just a baby. They treated him like a human being and not just another case. You know, one of the nurses wrote to me after he died and shared with me about him. It was really sweet, and it meant a lot to me. You know, so the nurses are the ones who tend to catch things, because they're the ones working with them the most.
And that's why Sherry and I know each other, because her child also had hypoplastic left heart syndrome. When Alex was first diagnosed, that's what he was diagnosed with. So we have 5 more minutes. This has gone by so fast. I'd like to know if any of the participants have any questions that they would like to ask or stories that they would like to share.
Libby.
Hi, Anna. I'd just like to say hi and thank you. I just saw the link last night and I had no idea what I was walking into. Yeah, it's an honor to sit here amongst some heart mums and listen to your stories and hear your pain. And yeah, it's a real privilege to be here with you listening. And yeah, first, thank you for your vulnerability. I'm a heart mum too. I have a 7-year-old son that has a Fontan, and the reason why my camera was off was because he was singing in assembly this morning in Australia. And yeah, this year hopefully he'll be in full-time school. I was relating, Anita, to some of your story, not all of it, but I relate to the fact of a single parent. I lost my partner. They're not dead, but they're drowning in an addiction, and possibly the result of my diagnosis at 20 weeks when Daniel's dextrocardia was on the screen to show that his heart was actually in the wrong side of his body, let alone just one ventricle that was going to ever work, and everything else that was wrong with it. So Daniel wasn't supposed to survive, and this morning he's singing at school.
That's so
and last
great.
Valentine's Day, I published a book. This is the book. I sent it to Anna. It's not my story. It's not a heart-wrenching, emotional ride through my pain of being the mother of this very precious boy. It's purely a manual to help people get through from diagnosis at 20 weeks, how the heck you're supposed to get through those 3 surgeries and stay upright. My partner and I separated the day I walked in the house after Fontan surgery because that addiction was going to destroy what was left. Yeah, I don't know how we get through, but we do. And I know that these children are sent to us. And not by accident. So I don't know if there's another meeting. I'd love to come along. It's been a privilege to be here and listen to you all. My fear was losing my son. And I don't know when that's going to happen. But to hear your pain and to be here with you is an absolute privilege for me. So thank you. And thanks, Anna.
Hey,
I'll
Libby.
pass.
Libby, it's so nice to hear a voice and a face to put to the book. So yes, thank you for sending me your book. Yes, we're doing a whole series and we're supposed to be doing one next week too, but we have a slight schedule conflict. So we're thinking we might move it to Saturday. I have events on Facebook. So if you can join in the event, I'll be polling all of the people who said that they'll be coming to see what day will work for all of us. But congratulations on being an author. Look at all the authors we have here. This is so exciting. Yes, yes. I think sharing our stories and being willing to be vulnerable to each other, that's what actually makes us stronger. And that seems kind of ironic. Sherry, we're out of time. How did this
I know.
How did this happen so fast?
It was so interesting listening to Anita, and I just couldn't stop her.
I didn't know what to.
We didn't want to stop her. This is why I knew I needed to have Anita first, because I knew Anita would start this series off just the right way, helping us to share our stories. And I don't know how many of you know Brene Brown, but I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. She's a Houstonian and she's a researcher, and she talks about being vulnerable. And she talks about how that is what makes us strong. And that's what shows that we have courage. And Anita, you are one of the most courageous people I know. I'm so glad
Oh,
you're my
man.
friend.
Well, this is really a huge resource, having a gathering. I regardless of the book, just families needing to talk and share and be with each other. There's just so much. I really appreciate this. Thank
Well,
you.
we're going to be doing not only the Heart of a Mother book series, but Amy Lee, who is here with us too. Say hi, Amy.
Hi.
She
Hi,
has
Lee.
written a series of books, and we're going to be doing a book study on her books as well, which is really amazing. Baby Hearts Press has reached out to a bunch of different authors, and we're creating, thanks to Amy and Jenny Muscatel, who couldn't be here today. She'll be here next week. We are starting a collaborative bookstore, but it's going to be even more than that. We're hoping to have musicians and artists and other people as well, all collaborating so that we can have meetings just like this, Anita. You're so right. It's all about
That's
us
great.
coming together and sharing with one another and just being that support group that so many of us need.
Excellent.
So that does conclude this. I can't believe we're 2 minutes late. Sorry for that. I try to be right on
Great to
time.
see everybody.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for
Great to see
coming.
you all.
I hope I
See
see
you
you
next
all
time.
at the next one too. Thank you so
You
much.
bet.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank
You were
you.
amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Anna.
Bye, everyone. Sorry I missed the
welcome.
first part.
That's okay. You can come next time.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks
All
for
right,
sharing with
thanks.
us, Nancy. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, bye.
To hear your voices.